Oh, here we are. Hi, my name is Sean Cotter. I am the executive director for Wicked Queer, and I'm joined by Carolina and Teddy, who are the directors of Queen of Lapa. We're here to talk about the film. So, thanks for coming and being part of this festival. I loved your film. This is not my first film dealing with Juana Munez at all, but I love sort of like, especially since her passing, the sort of, I love the sort of focus on um, her hostel and her sort of like her activism is sort of like played out in Queen of Lapa a lot more than some of her other sort of portraits, we'll say. Tell me about how you both got into the project and what was your motivation for making the film?
Well, thanks for having us and showing the film. It really means a lot to us. But we're married, and I was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and my whole family still lives there. So we often go back to visit family, and my mother lives in the neighborhood of Gloria, which is right next to Lapa. So Teddy is also a street photographer, and what do you want to share?
Okay. So we had been going back and forth to Rio just about once a year between like 2008, 9 to 2013. And like Carol was saying, she lives in Gloria, which is right next to Lapa, and right literally at the end of her block is where, the trans sex workers work. So year after year, what struck me is just kind of like their natural integration into the community. And it was there was a synergy to it that was kind of special, I thought. And, Carol had grown up there, and so it wasn't something that was really pointed out or talked about much, but we started having family discussions about it and why. And then I came out that her father had something, like a small part to do with how that occurred historically. And so this kind of like led us down this long winding road of learning about Luana. And then when we learned about Luana, just her presence kind of blew us away, and we just kind of set forth to meet her just for coffee, to like just on a basic human level. And long story short, we met her and we clicked and we just had a great time together, and it kind of just developed organically to this documentary.
Yeah, we didn't know when we met her about a hostel, but we then learned about all of the many works that she has done to really support the LGBTQ community and the sex working community. And she's such an activist, and what an incredible, powerful, courageous woman. So once we met her and learned about a hostel and just saw really how she has such a motherly way of being, we knew that we wanted to film this experience, and it would go beyond photography. So that's how we met her.
I mean, the photography in the film is really gorgeous. Just some of the moments of like when you're in the bedrooms of some of the women, and just a composition is really, really absolutely lovely. What I really enjoyed about it, as opposed to the other films I've seen, is that sort of you really capture that sort of she's kind of like, she is the mother of all of these women. She's very protective. She's also very real with them, like a mother is, which I think is kind of great, because I feel like often with LGBT people, we form our own families. We're often disowned by our biological families. It's a blessing if we're not, but we do form sort of like family units and people that we're, our little enclaves and our little tribes that we sort of like look to depend and kind of learn from, and sort of that support us. And I feel like her creating this space, so important and so amazing to have a story like that. And kind of tell me a little bit about, how the sort of the project developed from sort of the photography, like you moved from the photography on.
Well, the photography started because I'm a street photographer. That's like my first love. I started actually in Boston doing street photography, but and so it's I lost my train of thought there. But Sorry.
So from photography to film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So for photography to film, I mean, it just kind of, it started that way as like an idea, but it, you know, meeting Luana and just understanding, we didn't even understand the hostel at first. It was a very organic kind of journey we went on. But when we met Luana, it's like, she's everything you said. She's like mother, she's, you know, philosophical, she's intense, she's like violent at times and loving and just so endlessly interesting and needed to be on film. But also you were talking about other films of her and other representations, and what we found is just like so much exploitation in the media and just even on the street walking, hanging out with Luana, it's like you're getting all this nasty attention and just different aspects, you know, like that. And so, and she didn't want to be in a film at all, but what kind of, you know, enticed her to it is that just we're like, well, we're just going to film. We have no agenda or story. We don't have any angle on this whatsoever. Like, and she kept like saying, well, what's the story? What's the angle? Because she's so used to like these projects having a story before even, and she's like used as a prop or an actress or something like that. And
we're fans of direct cinema, so just explaining that this is the style that we are interested in watching documentaries. We are not a big fan of those documentaries that are just talking heads or feels like it's a music video. Nothing wrong about them, but it's not the type of movie that we like to watch. So in explaining that, I think it boosted a curiosity in her of like, oh, these people are not coming in here with a scripted documentary for me and the girls.
And it just kind of, it grew. It was just a very organic thing. It started as a very simple friendship, and then it kind of blossomed. Like, she wasn't even going to be in the film at first, but when we saw how the hostel was being run, we just felt that that was such a like positive experience within, you know, what is so often so dark and dangerous and scary. And this situation was just so loving within that it was like Luana represented kind of a lighthouse to all these souls to come and have family. And so we just really wanted to highlight the hostel as much as Luana because of that, as a model of, because so much, you know, like sex work documentaries and stuff like that, they're just like HBO Up All Night exploitation, and it's just terrible. And it's just, it focuses on the extremeness and the drugs and the Johns and all this kind of stuff that wasn't the reality that we were witnessing, and that is the reality that's never shown. And so and that was something that she kind of fell in love with and allowed us to do it. And again, she wasn't supposed to be in it, but as just like the trust grew and we just were very natural about everything, she started hanging out more, and then it's like, then she's the star, you know. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting where you talk about her skepticism, because you have that scene where you're watching that TV show, the documentary about her, and the guys in the studio actually look at you and go, oh, they like feel like she's being extra performative. Like there's this weird sort of moment where she's beating the crap out of that guy, and then you cut to the two video technicians who look directly at the camera and go, oh, well, we know she's playing a character. Like it was just really strange. But now that you talk about her sort of hesitation, you could sort of see why, if that's like, she's been there before and she's not going to do that again, which is, you know, not surprising.
Yeah, and even in recent years, that has happened too. There is an episode of a show on Vice that they go inside of her house and the hostel, and she kicks them out. You know, she knows, and she is a performer, and she knows when people are trying to cross the line and exploit.
I love the moment of like where she's just kicking that guy's ass. Like, she's like, we're all a mess. You think we're all a mess? And I'm just like, that's amazing. Like, because the thing is like, that's also like, you know, such a stereotype too of sex work is that they're just going to be passive victims, and then it's going to be an easy target for wrong, like to, you know, play out your wrong fantasies on. And I love that, like, you portrayed her as a very strong, very smart, very wise woman, who was also very loving and caring. And she's also extremely funny throughout the whole film too. So I like you got this really. Whereas I feel like the last film I saw with her in it was I have to look at my notes because I wrote it down because I can never. It's Obscuro Barocco. I saw it in Berlin, and I actually fell in love with her then. And
Yeah.
it was just it was a weird screening because I saw the sort of the premiere of it, and the director was because she had just passed, and it was really kind of all. It was almost like a memorial. So it kind of it was sort of the sort of the way that film sort of like portrayed her was very kind of almost dampered by the sort of the memorialness of the director's sort of presentation of it. But I thought what was really kind of wonderful about your film is that you saw through her, you gave her dignity and you gave her like sort of reality as well. And you also gave that to all the girls that were staying in the house as well. They had their own, they weren't props or just sort of like fodder for the camera. They had their own lives, and they were sort of you saw they're sort of like, these are people, they're on Instagram, they're harassing Johns, they're sort of like they're standing up for themselves too, and they're kind of like, yeah, we're just working and making a living, which I think sometimes is missed in the sort of the conversation of sex work at all. It is also work.
I'll tell you a little secret. So, on the film when she said that she got a little Botox, that scene. So she got Botox because the director of Obscuro Barocco was coming to reshoot one scene all the way from France or Greece. So she's like, oh, I have to put Botox because she makes me do all these things. So we're like, what are you going to do?
Well, there's so many close-ups in that. I don't blame her for getting a little Botox.
We really wanted to make a film that I'm picturing one of her closest friends is this guy Tito, and he's kind of a therapist to the house as well, and she credits him as saving her life and helping her kind of with therapy and whatnot. But I mean, our goal was to where he watches the film and feels for 75 minutes that he's hanging out with her again. Like the real person, every dynamic of it, the good, the bad, the wonderful, the philosophical, the funny aspect, or wasn't like a performative film in the way that narratives or narrative documentaries can be.
Yeah, and that's why it was really important for us not to emphasizing the sex working aspect of it, because who cares? They're sex workers, they're proud, they should be proud, it's a job, and so we just wanted to show that people are people, like it doesn't matter what you do, you're still gonna always have the question like, well, what are we gonna have for dinner, or fall in love and have your heartbreaks and human feelings.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it. I was just about to see if you wanted to ask a question.
Well, based on what you're saying in regard to your approach to filmmaking, I'm curious about your editing process and how you're able to stay loyal in the editing room also. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, it was really intense. It started with the translation itself. So it took 2 years to translate, and we found we call her film angel at a certain point that really just gritted it out and did the majority of the translation. And she translated all the raw footage.
Wow.
And although she's from Rio and Carol's from Rio, the girls are from all different parts of Rio, have all different education levels, have all different kind of slang. So just to translate it itself was like a major undertaking. And, like Carol would call her mom, and our translator would call her mom and family, and like, what exactly does this word mean? And even calling the girls, like, what did you mean by that word, and just figuring out like all the different layers of just dialect between them that's specific, and then between the community that's specific, and then between the regions that they're from. So that was intense. That was like maybe the hardest part. And then the editing itself was difficult as well. I would
say that we stood very close to the spirit of direct cinema. So there is no manipulation of the footage. to maybe someone asked something 15 minutes ago and then
Right.
we show an answer that was in a different day. That never happened. That's against our philosophy. So it was really what happened in that moment between the people that are talking to each other is what happened. There was no manipulation in the editing.
Actually, the hard part was, sorry?
What about was it chronological?
Oh, no. I mean, it wasn't really a narrative, so the chronology was more based on emotional spirit than story per se. So, you know, and that went through all different processes. Like the first edit was more representative of the chronology of our experience. And then with each edit, it became more about the audience experience of a new world, you know? So the first edit is like way different than the last edit, but the last edit is more informative to like the viewer's experience of like who are they supposed to focus on? So like Lowana. And then B, it's a hostel. So one of the first scenes is like we're in the hostel and kind of getting to know the world because there's no narrative or anything. And there's no narration. And we don't like those things. I hate narrations in movies. I just want to be a part of the real life of the documentary. And so, yeah.
I mean, I think that you were so successful in that too, because I mean, when you do just kind of like dive on in, you're soaking in it, and that's what kind of like also kind of like makes you relate to it as well, because you're sort of there with it, and it didn't feel forced, or you didn't feel like I like being a voyeur because I love filmmaking and I love watching stuff, but at the same time I didn't feel like a voyeur in that sort of world. I felt like I was in it, which is such a success.
Thank you.
Now, just going to circle back to the aspect of like performativeness and performance. Her performances in the film that you captured were really lovely. And could you talk a little bit about what it was like making them? Do you have more of them? Because I want more. Because they were really wonderful. Because like the sort of the duo of the singer and her dancing and her sort of like her sort of seduction on stage, it's just so magic. Like you really captured her magic with it.
Yeah, I mean, that was really her passion, is being a performer, being an artist. She talked about daily, and we were so lucky that we were there when she actually had a performance and they were giving her an award. So yes, we spent good 6 hours.
Yeah, like a whole night. But that was actually her last performance.
Mm-hmm.
Like
wow.
randomly. And that club is a really famous club as well, which is interesting. But I at first I thought you were going to talk about other performative aspects, because in other Q&As, people in certain festivals, people are asked like, is Luana performing for us per se? But I didn't know if that's what you meant at first. But
no, yeah, yes, we do. Maybe we can.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that would probably be my next question after this. And I mean, she did. I mean, honestly, she kind of did perform for us. I mean, the moments where she's, that you're photographing her and she's sort of posing and she's coming out with these like, if you don't have nails, a cigarette, and red lipstick, how could you be a whore? That is like, it's just like really kind of wonderful, like bon mots that she's coming up with. Do you want to kind of talk a little bit more about that sort of like performativeness that she kind of like embodied as well?
I think it's just her. I mean, it's not any kind of like, whether we're filming or not, like she will throw these philosophical things and then turn around and just say something like awful and then turn around and like give you a hug. Like it's just her personality, and it's the personality of the house too.
Yeah. I think it's hard for people to believe when we say that, but so often the camera was off and we were just hanging out. And she's exactly that. She's with a fan, she's dramatic, she moves around, she wants the attention, she walks, very loudly and very proudly.
But in terms of that scene specifically, though, there is a performative aspect, because that is the one time where there was another outsider from the house. kind of performing a kind of a, you know, fashion show type shoot where we could feel a bit of more of a performance towards them, and we're filming it over their shoulder kind of a thing. But
yeah, that scene, it felt a little bit when that happened in real life, that the photographer kind of really wanted to be part of the documentary, so he was kind of putting up a show, just asking questions to her that I don't think you would ask someone if you're really good friends with them, but he just wanted to emphasize how long they knew each other. Like when he asked about her breasts, and says, see, this is how long we've known each other. And of course she was picking up on that. So that was interesting for us to experience.
yeah, it was almost like we were on the inside of the inner circle, and then it was like we almost felt like an intrusion. But even though they had been friends for a while, I don't know if that makes sense.
No.
Because there's different kind of friendships, right? You know, so
That makes total sense too.
yeah.
The whole scene with her, and I believe it was her because it was dark, with the phone light in her breast implants. That was kind of like, that was really kind of amazing. Like I'd never seen that in my life, but it was just kind of like, it was just kind of wonderful how like uninhibited she was with everything. That she was just like, this is who I am, you know.
And she created that environment in the house where, you know, the majority of people felt that way the longer they stayed there. And that was what was so beautiful about the house, is that it allowed a space to even reflect on like past violence and other things in a different kind of a more healthy way. I don't know how to say it, but in a way that wasn't as lived in the experience, where it's like, I don't know, can't explain it.
Well, there was that moment where she was talking about the shooting the guy, and she ends it with like, they never found my gun.
Yeah.
It was kind of, but I mean, the way that she sort of addressed that sort of like, you know, because it was obviously a traumatic experience. She just, you could tell that she had lived through it and lived in it for such a long time, that it was, you know, it was like sort of like like almost a war story in many ways. And it was kind of just this sort of wonderful like reminder of like how dangerous life can be, and especially if you are doing sex work and, you know, being a trans woman. I mean, it's kind of like just a reminder for that as well. My next question would be, how is it with the other women who lived in the house? Like, how was working with them? Did you feel a little resistance to accessibility to them, or I mean, how is it to work with them?
It was great. I mean, we Luana, when she gave us permission to film, she gave us one day. We're like, okay, we'll take whatever we can get. So the first day, we met some of the girls that she's like, you know, focus on them if you want, but everybody here is available. I think that the first hour they were just a little cautious of like, oh, you know, when is this going to become exploitive, them too, from seeing from Luana. And I think after an hour and just our energy and just being really a fly on the wall, they start to forget that we're there. And by end of day one, we're friends and we're close, we're invited back. And, you know, by day 3, we're all best friends. We're eating together. Like my mom is baking cake, and like I'm bringing cake to the house. And to this day, we are pretty close and we stay in touch, and they're just lovely.
But there's layers to it, of course. Like, and like to go back to what you were saying before about, you know, like Luana's attitude. What was so impressive is just the like her ability to like almost remain herself through all of this kind of violence. And she's of a different generation that work more on the street versus the girls that are younger that get a lot of dates online, and it's not as street oriented. But so there's different generations in the house. And so a lot of the older girls were initially like, we don't want to have anything to do with this. But the way I describe it is like in a narrative, they always talk about like the peeling of the onion to get to the heart of the story. And for this, it was like the opposite. It's like we started with the heart of the story, which is Luana, the heart of the trust. And then just us being us, and whatever naturally occurred, it just like the onion expanded to where we started with like a couple of girls that are like, I'm totally down to do whatever. And then some of those girls were more or less performative or not. And then maybe they peeled away, and then other ones became the focus. But my point being is that as things went on, just everyone became a part of it. But not necessarily, like Gabby, for instance, wasn't supposed to be in the film at all. But she's like a major part of it now, obviously. So it's kind of like things like that where, over time, it was just, I don't know, it was just so casual that it wasn't, if someone said not to be filmed, we're not going to film them. But then maybe the next day they're like, whatever, who cares? And it was fine. So.
Yeah, my next question was about Gabby. And, how did she become part of the film? What is she do? Like, because she was kind of like this moment of like, light and energy in it, and she was so like, I loved her sort of her moxie, I guess would be the right word to just kind of describe it, is that she was filming on she's putting the John on Instagram Live and like sort of like she or Facebook Live or whatever it was, and just she seemed so fearless. What was it like working with her, and how did she sort of become part of the project as well?
She's so charismatic and so incredible, and she is very much fearless and strong and powerful and courageous and really loves life. So again, like the first day she wasn't around for most of the day, and then at the end of the day she was home and we started talking, and she was inviting us to her room, and we just bonded. She's fantastic. She's really happy about the film. She's really proud to be in the film, and
she's just open-hearted and lovely, and like that's all. I don't know. There wasn't like a reason why other than just it happening and us going along with it and her going along with it and being friends, and and she was kind of like Luana's like protege or something like that. I mean, a lot of the girls were, but her and Emily were maybe more so of that generation because they stayed there the longest. Different girls stay for different periods of time, and girls come and go. And, some girls are there for a weekend and some are there for 10 years. So.
And I think what Gabby is also very smart in using the social media is because most of their work actually doesn't come from standing on a corner of the street. It comes from apps. So she was just making her presence known and making a brand out of herself. So she was really smart to do those daily kind of like Gabby shows, and then she would get kicked out of Facebook and then she'd come back with a different name.
Comes back with a different name, and then she's on the street. Hey, look at these girls.
Yeah, and we didn't, I mean, the whole thing was a process of discovery, and that was something that we didn't, originally think about or realize. Just the sophistication of the app use and whatnot, and even that wonderful little excerpt where she's on the street, where that's like a short film to us, was just something we bumbled around like looking at, whoa, like this is not, we have to use this, because even a scene that we shot was like posted on Facebook of like the John there, and just, I don't know, just it added to such a wonderful dynamic to the reality of the situation and the generational thing going on.
Well, since Luana passed away in 2017, what do you know what has happened to the hostel now? Is it a because I know she was trying to work on making it more of a legacy and also a resource. Now, did that happen? Kind of what is the sort of the future of the hostel?
So the hostel moved. It's not in Lapa anymore. It's actually near an area where when Carnival happens in Rio de Janeiro and you have like the big Carnival party, Samba School, it's near that area. And who is running it is her niece, who you have to know who she is to identify her in the film.
She was the girl helping Luana in the performance behind the scenes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Doesn't have a lot of lines in it, but like is a big part of Luana's life and almost handler or something like that. But
yeah,
so she runs a house now. Go
Yeah.
on, sorry.
And I think her legacy is definitely alive throughout the girls. I mean, even some of the other girls have created houses of their own in different cities, in different places. And what is very clear is that they bring the activism and the sense of we stand with each other that we want to really gave to them. And yeah, I see me over and over. And the way that also want to inspire so many of them, like Mariana, the one that fell in love with someone she met 4 hours ago. She's now a nurse.
Wow.
And so it's really beautiful to see how Juana really mentored so many, and her legacy really lives through the girls as she touched their lives.
In the square.
Oh yeah, and then there is the square in front of the Lapa house. It's still being petitioned to change the name of that square to be Luana Muniz Square.
Oh, that's amazing. That'd be a great tribute to her.
She really created this like entrepreneurial aspect to this, which we found so positive because, you know, like she would teach the girls like about bank accounts and like, you know, hook them up with doctors and like therapists, and just kind of gave structure to the experience that doesn't exist, you know, especially when prostitution is illegal or whatnot, it becomes criminalized. And so, you know, I don't know, that's something that we were hoping to kind of capture as a format, I guess. And like even a girl, like there's the house that exists, but then there's another girl that has like a B&B like that she's doing. And like, I don't know if she would think of that without this kind of experience of Luana. So
it's important to make sure that there's mentorship to kind of like protect that future generation. And I'm so glad to hear that her life has inspired these other women to sort of take charge of those. And I hope that has that ripple effect throughout, because that's super important. So what's next for Queen of Lapa? More festivals, hopefully. Physical release, maybe?
yeah, actually, we never really talked about this, but we would like to produce a book of photography where like the film comes with the book, and where, I don't know, we're still brainstorming it, but where there's like a barcode to like certain girls that like maybe it accesses like a deleted scene, or I don't know, or something like that. But otherwise we're doing more festivals, and we're really, if anyone out there is listening, trying to get it more into Brazil where it needs to be seen, and to where, you know, Brazilian society is, for us, is so important to see this. And it's just been such a struggle. So I don't know if anyone is associated with your festival that has contacts to Brazil or South America that could help. We have a premiere coming up, but it's been after a year of celebration of this film. It's like in a festival in Brazil, and it's been very hard. So
yeah, I was curious if you guys, and you can email me later if you have met with João Federico, who runs Mix Brazil out of Sao Paulo.
Of course you've heard of Mix Brazil.
We can email, yeah.
Okay.
Because João's a lovely, I mean, he's based in the U.S. now, but I think he's still sort of, I'm not sure if the festival exists. As you were saying, Bolsonaro has been not a friend to the queer arts. So, but I mean, as far as I know, they're still going strong. But we can email about that.
Thank you.
Anything else that you'd want to tell our Wicked Queer community about Queen of Lapa or yourselves? Next projects, anything?
Maybe what our goal really for this film is to have as many people involved and, you know, and especially, I mean, all people watch it, but I always think it's important for people outside of the LGBTQ community directly to watch it and really understand what is happening in their own backyards and how can they be allies and protectors of, so people feel safe. Brazil is still has the highest homicide rate for LGBTQ community, and that's unacceptable. It's really painful. So tell your friends to watch the film, tell your family to watch the film, and tell them to care about their own community and their own cities, and make sure that they are doing whatever they can to make all people feel safe.
What's so important. Kevin, do you have any more questions before we wrap up?
I just put it in the chat. I didn't want to interrupt the flow, but I may know someone in Brazil, and I left my Gmail account in chat. If you want to get in touch with me, I will look into that for you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Kevin.
and I posted the link to Mix Fest Brazil, which apparently is happening this November. So we'll email and I'll send you Zhao's contact.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I support as many people seeing this film as possible. Queen of Lapa is running until the festival end, which is August 2nd, on our Zerb TV Wicked Queer Film Festival channel. We are an all-volunteer organization. If you want to get involved with us, there is a link on our website, which is wickedqueer.org. We're always looking for people to be involved in any small part of the festival. And if you want to donate to us, you can do so on the website as well. Thank you so much, Carolina and Teddy, and also Kevin and James, for joining us for this conversation about Queen of Lapa.
Thanks for having us so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah. What a wonderful film. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Great film.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.